to everyone, good morning. I'm Chiara Mazzone, I work at the European Commission. It's the Technological and Innovation Department of the European Commission. And today I want to talk to you about Europe and blockchains, plural. How to keep trust in disruptions. These are the two main elements that I will be talking about this morning. Because I really think that trust is the first element that we have to consider, trust and governance, and disruptions is the second element. It will bring disruptions. We have been hearing yesterday how many changes it will bring, so we are ready to go and to keep these two parallel tracks that should converge in some way at some point. Blockchain, is it a digital revolution? I think so, because blockchains are digital distributed ledgers where all the information are shared and updated in the same, nearly real time, in a distributed network among all participants in an encrypted format. But what it's really, the real novelty of blockchain is that, that's my son, hello. I'm sorry. The real disruption is that it can be used for much more than transfer of currency. And the real difference between the internet and blockchains is that internet is copying information and is transferring information, whereas blockchain are transferring value. That's why we talk about internet of value, which is a very different thing. If you have a property and you want to transfer a property, and you want to be sure that you're not double handling this property, and you're sure that it has to be transferred, you have to be in a context of blockchain where this principle of double spending is not possible. We have to kickstart the morning and the whole day, so I think it's useful to come back to three main concepts. We talk about blockchain. We do prefer in Europe to talk about blockchain-inspired technologies because you see this part, a chain of blocks. Yes and no. There are blockchains that do not have blocks. So there are different ways and technical development is there. So please understand that this is just one way of doing and implementing these distributed systems. Second important concept is that you're having permissionless blockchains, which are the public blockchain that we all know now, Bitcoin and Ethereum, and you have permission blockchains. The blockchains that we have been listening to many yesterday. This is very different from a regulatory point of view. You don't have the same challenges. Permissionless blockchain, for the moment, are less scalable than permission blockchains, and they ensure sort of pseudonymity or anonymity, which is not one of the main features of permission blockchains. And then let's have a look at the last part. So centralized, decentralized, and distributed. This is very important because today we live in a society where we have centralized trusted third party, for instance, to let us function. Internet brought a kind of decentralization in which we thought that peer-to-peer connection can happen without intermediaries, but indeed all the platforms and all the central platform models that we are experiencing today, even if we can host someone else on our sofa, on our couch, we still need a platform which is centralized. The promise of blockchain is to move on the third part of the screen, which is the distribution, the real peer-to-peer network. I won't go into these features because probably most of you know, but let's take one or two which are important for today's works. So security and resilience. In a time of cyber attacks, you have no single point of failure. You have no single database. You have no single central server that could be attacked, and it could be cyber attacked. You have different points that are distributed, which cannot be attacked unless you have a majority of these points. And the more points you have, the more secure you are. So resilience, it's an important thing. Immutability, it's another important feature. Guaranteed by cryptography. It means that you cannot erase, even if we are hearing that University of Nicosia is trying to understand how to change something once it's put on a blockchain. But it guarantees that everyone can trust the system. And then third features that I would like to spend 30 seconds on is incentive mechanism, which we usually call tokenization. What does it mean? It means that you have incentives that allow you to make the system work. It's called token, it's called digital currency or cryptocurrency, but it also means another thing. That is to say that you can digitalize everything that is a physical asset. This is an extremely important revolutionary consequence because it means that what you have in a physical world could take a digital shape. Imagine that you are issuing coins related to the production of solar energy. How much does it cost solar energy? Which kind of value does solar energy has? You can tokenize this. So I think today tokens are not fully 100% discovered, but this will be one great thing that blockchain will bring in the next years and months to come. All these features allow for sure for a better and increased transparency, traceability and control, accountability nearly in real time and much more granular than what we are doing today, and a kind of automation. We have to set the line, which kind of automation do we want, above the line or below the line. There was a presentation yesterday talking about this. But the real innovation here is that it brings ecosystem simplification. That is to say, the relationship between people that need to trust each other are simplified. We all know the first killer application, and I think for the moment it's the only one, which is Bitcoin, which really works worldwide among millions of people. We don't have another application which is similar in scope and in implementation today. But remember that we are in the era of ferment. That is to say, we are experiencing technological discontinuity, revolutionary, it's a breakthrough, it's radical, it's emergent. And in the era of ferment, you'll have technical variations, you have rivalry among many startups, you have competition, but you also have technical uncertainty and legal and regulatory uncertainty, which I will come upon later. Then probably you will have some kind of dominant design, hopefully open, and then you will jump into the era of incremental change, having a look also, having an eye open also at the fact that it will continue to disrupt. But coming back to the title of my presentation, it's all about trust. So what's trust? And how you define trust? I mean, blockchain offer a trustless environment in a society that need to be trustful. Yesterday, one speaker was talking about in real life, you have trust. Trust is expensive. It's based on relationship. So how do you ensure that we will apply the rule of law, and not the rule of math? Do we really want to apply the rule of math? Do we really trust coders and developers? I'm being a bit provocative here. But don't you think that we have to have these two groups of people coming together to imagine a sort of governance of these blockchains? And when I'm talking about governance, it's not government, it's governance. This is a set of rules that are common, shared, open, that leave open access to blockchain, that are not walled gardens, but that establish a kind of framework in which everyone knows which are the rules he has to play with and he has to respect. I like very much these photos because I was not born, so I'm sorry, I'm just citing and quoting things that I've read, but it really reminds me of the first days of the internet where you had the US, DARPA agency and the ARPANET, in which the objective was that you have to connect 3 or 4 universities among each other and start exchanging information. Market players were there, I think, at the moment where we are, operating in sort of gray areas of business and legislation. So my message would be, don't be too scared to operate now, because things like more defined areas in legislation, legal and regulatory framework will probably come, and hopefully in the good sense. Why I've put this beast over there? Because very often in Europe, we are asked, are you going to regulate blockchain? And you will be hearing this, I think, this afternoon with a presentation with the intervention of Eva Kaili, European Member of Parliament. which is the beast we have to tame? Is there a beast? Do we have to regulate blockchain? I don't think so. Do we have to regulate the activities that are using blockchain technologies? And then I will come back to one very famous sentence of Lauren Lessig in the early days of internet, the law of horses. He said, we have a law for the animals. The animals do know how to behave among themselves. Do we need, for the cyberspace, a law of the horses? That is a subcategory of law. And I will say, do we need for blockchain a law of ponies, which is a subcategory of horses? It's probably a bit too narrow-minded to look at this regulation towards one single technology. If we take the example of ICOs that were briefly mentioned yesterday, can we look at ICOs in a monolithic way? No, I don't think so. Are they commodity? Are they securities? Are they subscription models to something? So you earn a token, you buy a token, and by then you participate to build the ecosystem that you are believing in. So I think we still have many, we have many applications around here, lots of potential, lots of applications, countless opportunities in various sectors, and still the ones that are unenvisaged for the moment. You have energy, with the decentralization of energy markets in which you will have exchanges among peers producing and consuming electricity without putting this electricity into the national infrastructure, into the central infrastructure. You will have entertainment and media. We have a good project from the Maltese government working on IP rights for offering a fairer remuneration to artists. We have seen hundreds and I think even more proof of concept and some pilots in financial services. We are working and we are extremely attached to government and public services blockchain-based applications. We are exploring healthcare, how blockchain can grant privacy and also data ownership to patients, exchanging their information with doctors, with hospitals. We have the insurance sector, which is moving very fast with the consortium B3I. We have transportation and logistics, and many more. What else to expect? Probably when we talk about banking and when we talk about financial reporting, which is one important aspect after the crisis, we can think about RegTech being based on blockchain technologies. Any kind, indeed, of reporting, any kind of compliance will be enabled by blockchain. We can think also at tax and custom collection at the European level. We can think about better digital identity management. That is to say that the people or the person will have his own identity and will manage his own credentials, offering these credentials and offering parts of his identity necessary to the service that he wants to be identified or authenticate with. But there are still a number of challenges ahead. I don't want to scare you, but I think there are three categories of challenges that we have to address today. First one, technical challenges, which is for sure scalability. But we've seen that technological developments are happening quite fast, and so we are not scared about the possible solution that will be found in the future. But we do think that with the multiplication of blockchain solutions that are seen today in the market, interoperability would be a big issue. How will we be able to ensure interoperable solutions, or how we will be able to ensure that the data that are in one blockchain solution will be portable to another solution? This is something I think we can act at European level. We have then two other natures of challenges, the regulatory ones, that is, are we compliant with EU and national rules? Are we able to develop regulation that are technologically neutral, innovation-friendly, and future-proof? This is the big challenge, because when you do regulation, sometimes you do put things like you have to have a paper-based procedure or process, and then you are stuck within it. Is this really technologically neutral? Question mark. And I think we have to develop a kind of enabling framework, which could comprise, for instance, sandboxing, and this is happening in some member states. The Federal Conduct Authority in the UK is doing this. The Netherlands are quite advanced. Lithuania Central Bank is experimenting with this. So a framework which is innovation-friendly, but which also help experimentation from the bottom. And also to have regulators, good regulators, that have to keep up with the pace of innovation as well. To be there, to observe, to learn, and to let experiment the private sector. And then, of course, we have legal and policy challenges. I mean, how do you capture this technology which is borderless, which is worldwide? Which kind of jurisdiction to apply when you need to fix something? How to deal with the right to be forgotten, which is one of the main rights of the GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation that will come into force next year. How do we deal with privacy? Are blockchain granting privacy by design? How do we recognize legal validity of documents that are in a blockchain? How do we ensure that, that there's enforcement of these documents before a court? Who's assuring mediation, and arbitration? Okay, blockchain provides a single truth, a single source of truth, but are we sure that when we have problems, blockchain will help solving them? Who's liable in case of a bad smart contract? Who's granting the ID to one person to enter a blockchain space? Who's verifying that the information that are putting, the information that is put on the blockchain is accurate? Do we still need intermediaries then? Do we still need notaries? Just a shift in their profession? Question mark. So what the European Union is doing? We have been talking about challenges, we have been talking about potential and application. We are in a context in which all important economies in the world are investing heavily in digitization. Europe is in the global competition. We know that we have some member states that are well ahead in the global, that are global leaders. Think about Nordic countries especially, but many others that are undergoing a heavily digitization process. And we do think that the completion of the digital single market, which is our political strategy for having a unique digital market in the next year, will put Europe in a better position to succeed. Think to a startup that is born in Cyprus and want to go elsewhere. Is it quite easy, apparently, for the fintech startups? It's better to be in Europe than to be in the United States. We were listening to this yesterday, because you don't have 50+1 legislations that you have to comply with. We just have one legislation. But are we good, as we are in fintech, for all the other domains? How can we move forward? We have world-class science-based and well-educated population. The University of Nicosia is showing the way with this conference and with these initiatives. We have entrepreneurial spirits and creativity. We also have high-quality public services. We have a massive amount of public investment that should go more towards innovation. And then we have an ambition. We have a predictable, indeed, regulatory environment, and we have the ambition to make the digital single market something true for citizens. That's why, in the last revision of our political strategy last May, we put blockchain and distributed ledger technology as a breakthrough. We will be launching, some of you were participating also to the call, a European Observatory and Forum on Blockchain. I will talk about it a bit later. We fully acknowledge that as blockchain emerged with Bitcoin, our initial European focus was on financial markets. Therefore, the European Parliament issued a report on blockchain and virtual currency 2 years ago. The European Commission created a fintech task force, one of which work stream was dedicated to blockchain application in financial services. But we do acknowledge, especially as DG Connect, that blockchain applications are far beyond financial sector. We are not the only one to say this, because we have very recent Council conclusion. European Council are the head of states and governments, so the most political I would say, instance that you can think about at the European level. Let's say that to successfully build a digital Europe, you need a sense of urgency on issues such as artificial intelligence and blockchain technologies, while at the same time you have to strengthen the framework condition we were discussing before with a view to enable Europe to explore new markets through risk-based radical innovations. This is a really breakthrough for head of states and government. I've never seen this kind of risk-based radical innovation, which is quite good for us, and which asks the European Commission to act. So how are we acting? What's our approach? We think we need to have a European vision, but also this enabling framework. Technology evolution pace is light years ahead of regulatory frameworks, we all know, but how can regulator have a place? How can we react to this? We think that governance and interoperability, that is to say, a set of rules, common rules, easy rules, but that identify someone, for instance, when you enter in a blockchain, and set how this is working, and interoperability, ensuring the fact that you can transfer things from one blockchain to another, are the key basic conditions for making this happening. We are moving, I don't know if fast enough or not, but we were actively monitoring before, and now we are moving to action. We organized the first European Commission, European Parliament joint conference. We will be launching the European Blockchain Observatory and Forum. We are defining partnership inside different ministries, I will say, Directorate General of the Commission, because we are the most general Director General working on technology and innovation, but we do have use cases in other ministries, taxation, energy, management of funds, international aids are just a few examples. We are talking to member states, we are talking to local authorities. We want to ensure that we have broader engagement of our industry, of our European industry, that we stimulate startups and we have innovative ecosystems, and that we have use cases that are relevant at European level. I just gave you an example. We are in the middle, we were in the middle, probably it's a bit over, but we were in the middle of a refugee crisis. So can we use technologies, these new technologies, to better solve this problem? Can we offer an identity, a digital identity to refugees that are arriving on our coast? Can we offer them a digital identity to access also the services that we offer them, and also to enable them to settle down, those who have rights, to settle down in Europe at good and human conditions? We also have a very pronounced interest in funding projects, which are research and innovation projects in the EU. We have few projects that are already working with blockchains in the healthcare sector, in the media sector, in the IoT, in the smart cities, but we want to fund more. And this will come very soon, I will say next week, with the publication, with the presentation of the Horizon 2020, 2018-2020 work program. And we are engaged in international standardization works. I will focus to finish on 3 last initiatives, which are, I think, the main pillar of what we are doing. The European Blockchain Observatory and Forum, which is a sort of hub that we want to launch to access, share, disseminate, and build knowledge on blockchains with the objective not just to passively, I've seen 1 minute 42, with the objective of not passively monitoring what's happening, but to be up to date of technical developments, to develop expertise and knowledge in Europe, but also to address through groups of people that want to work together, that do comes from industry, that do comes from regulators, that do comes from different geographies, to address sectoral and cross-cutting issues, scalability, compliance with EU laws, interoperability. We also want to build EU interest use cases. And we are expecting that this observatory will provide us for need for action. We will be launching next week, so please stay tuned, a feasibility study on a possible European blockchain infrastructure. We want to have the right conditions for the advent of an open, innovative, trustworthy, transparent, and EU law compliant data and transactional environment. That is to say, we want to assess the opportunity, the benefits, and the challenges of having European framework or infrastructure supporting blockchain-based services. We will try to deploy first European services, but it will be open to public sector and to private sector, and this will be the strength of this possible infrastructure. So to be launched in a few days, stay tuned. I will keep you updated. And then we have been engaging in standardization works at international level. Without going into many details, we are participating to the working groups on terminology, reference architecture, smart contracts. We have one representative here who's the convener, use cases, security and privacy and identity. And we developed, it's the last line, a new pilot for financial reporting gateway. It's something quite technical, but indeed in 3 words, it helps listed companies to have more transparent registers that are accessible cross-border. We have many other actions, I think, but I've outlined the panorama, and hopefully I've shown you that we are quite active in this field. If I have a few messages and takeaways, it will be that as the University of Nicosia, you should be there at the right moment to make it happen. Second thing is that the challenge to broad adoption is legal and regulatory enabling environment that we have been discussed all through this conference. I would also say that compliance is an opportunity because it will generate business, but it will also enable you to stay within a legal framework which exists and which is recognized. I would say that law enforcement and everything that turns around blockchain is the real challenge, as well as integration with the legacy system, that is to say what already exists, all our IT systems, how will it be done? And last but not least, the European Union is in action, so let's keep traction. Thank you very much. If there are questions.
Thank you.
Yes.
I'm over here if you want. Question is that governments kind of missed the chance to regulate the internet. Maybe it happened too quickly, people didn't know what was coming.
I can't hear you, I'm sorry.
Okay, governments seem to have missed the chance or opportunity to regulate the internet. But having missed that chance, the regulators seem to have recognized that blockchain is something we should regulate in one form or another. And I think there's a natural human tendency that if you're in the regulation business, you want to regulate. Not necessarily to serve, but to keep your place in the system. How do you see all of these initiatives to regulate an industry that is bottom-up driven, meaning all of the individual entrepreneurs are the ones who are creating these new opportunities and ideas? How do you balance that with, let's say, a natural regulate? And with the thing, I think we see a centrally managed economy didn't work in the Soviet Union for too long, and the US military's use of the internet wasn't a successful one because hierarchical. So how do you balance those as a regulator?
You're very right in your analysis, but I think we don't necessarily need to regulate anything at this stage. There are few things like ICOs in which you can issue statements saying that in some way it's risky. You have the chance to lose the money that you invested. But in Europe, for the moment, I haven't seen any regulation, neither on blockchain nor on ICOs. You've got statements that warns consumers. I think the right approach nowadays is not to regulate because we have to, and it's our role. Because we also don't understand 100% what's there. The technical developments are happening daily, on a daily basis. We do see lots of business models that are emerging that are very different from one to another. So our role at the moment is really to be solid on the understanding and also to focus on things not that need to be regulated, but on things that need to be clarified. That's all the sense of the purpose of the enabling environment. If you've got an environment which is safe, stable, but innovation-friendly, I think this will be the key to a good development without hampering the innovation that is out there. Yes.
Hi, good morning. I'm Dutch, and we are known as quite direct people in Europe, so I don't want to be rude. But
please go ahead.
It's the truth. I've seen lots of questions coming through and lots of mappings and lots of initiatives. Is the European Union as a government thinking about the outputs of what they are going to do regarding this disruptive movement? That's what I would like to know. Because, well, lots of people of us, and especially after some classes I followed, I want to know what the governments are doing, especially for people with bitcoins and blockchain movements. Is there any thoughts regarding all those initiatives, mappings and PricewaterhouseCoopers, you know what I mean? That's what I like to know.
I can give you an example back as you are Dutch. The Dutch government is really active on blockchain. You have a Dutch national coalition, but what the government is doing is to try to do proof of concept to test how this technology could prove useful. So in the nitty-gritty is really to understand if, I have a pilot in mind, to understand if when you don't go to work, is it for good reasons, and if we enable a blockchain to register this kind of information, it will speed up processes. The reasoning that we have, which is probably quite high level, is that also member states and cities are doing their own initiatives, so we don't want to hamper them doing their own initiatives. I think we have a different role. There are some regulations that are at the European level, such as in financial services or in taxation and customs, that we do know we have leverage on. For instance, we have one pilot from our colleagues in the financial services sector, which are exploring blockchain usage for reporting of the OTC derivatives. I know it's a bit technical, but they are studying all possible configurations of blockchains and not, or distributed ledgers, or all the forms that exist today to understand if this is something that could go through. So the approach now, I think it's more experimenting and proof of concepting, but also understanding that an overall legal policy interoperability framework could have much more than just saying yes or no to the technology. So indeed, there are governments that are doing already proof of concepting. We have some proof of concepts. We will have more in the years to come. We are investing on this. We have some European projects that do work on specific strands of this technology. But what is important today from our point of view is, for instance, to touch upon one subject, which I know is close to the heart of some of the participants, on smart contracts. What would you do if you don't have a framework? What's a smart contract? How does it work? Is it really smart? Is it a contract? Does it have legal validity? Is it enforceable? I think it's this kind of discussions that do have the most of value. And then, of course, you go along and you will have piloting. And you will have, we will be launching in the next days a prize on blockchain for social goods, which is an open prize, everyone can participate, which help to solve problems of the people. So up to you as well to come with your good ideas and implementations. And I think there was a last question here. Yes.
My name is Theo Panayotou, CIIM. I am Theo Panayotou, Director of CIIM. My question is about regulation of blockchain. The word there, decentralized, is the right word for blockchain, and is the right word also for the free market system. And when governments intervene in the free market system, they had a choice between intervening through command and control or focusing on market failures and finding some systems compatible with the market, such as some market mechanisms, some incentive systems to correct the problem. Most governments, including many times the European Union, have chosen the command and control because it makes them feel in control, and it's the wrong way. So since here we have a technology which actually mimics or is the representative of the free market, where you have all this decentralized decision-making. Yes, there will be some technology failures, like there are market failures. So the governments, including the EU, should think of ways by which they can incentivize the system to correct the market failures rather than impose regulations of the type of command and control which stifle innovation and technological progress. So that's what do you think about that? Thank you.
Hopefully I've demonstrated. You have support in the room. Hopefully I've demonstrated that we're not going to regulate anything, and this command and control is not the way we will take forward. But let's think, I mean, I know we have a worldwide audience, but we are also Europeans, and I'm talking about from a European point of view. Let's think that our public services will be one day, in 5, 10, 20 years, be deployed through blockchains of which we don't have the control. What does control mean? It's not stifling innovation. It's knowing which are the rules of the game for one public service to be trusted, to be working on this technology. It's also a way to prevent that we are locked in with one single vendor, because these technologies are fastly growing, fastly evolving, and one technological development probably is not, one single vendor probably would not cover all the technological developments. And it's also a way to adapt these technologies as the private sector is doing, because permissioned blockchain are an example that somehow these technologies can be governed and can be adapted, you know? The business sector doesn't like uncertainty, and that's why we are developing permission technologies. If I come back to the parallelism that I've put forward with the internet days, we've also seen that at the beginning, the telecommunication operators were against and were trying to size the opportunity and to narrow down the scope of the internet, bringing their vision of closed networks. I think we are in the same moment now, and probably one day, I'm not a futurist, I don't have a crystal ball, but probably one day we will find different blockchains around the world, some blockchains governed in an open way by some consortium of state, but this will not necessarily hamper innovation. And for sure, free market is there, and for sure the business is developing this. A second very quick element of our answer is that if we just think in Europe about market failures, I think we will lose the train.
Okay, we don't have more time for questions, so let's thank the speaker.
Okay, thank you.